start by telling how you met Brother George?
Yeah, my name is Mike Bradley. In 1975, I had an experience with the Lord in, I think it was in February. And when I had the experience with the Lord, I looked around and I couldn't find nobody that I felt like was straight. And I went to every kind of church I could go to. This was in Augusta, Georgia. And I went to just about every kind of church I could went. So I heard a man preaching on the radio. So I went down to meet him. He was in Augusta. And he gave me a book. Well, I read the book, and later I come back to him. I said, "Where is this man at?" He said, "Well, he's dead."
What book was it? You recall?
It was called The Revelation of Jesus Christ. So I said, and it was the name of it was The Revelation. So when I read it, I said, "This man here," I said, "he sounds right." And so I went back to the man that gave me the book, and I said, "Where's this man at?" And he said, "Well, he got killed in a car wreck in 1965. And then I was in a dilemma, and I said, "Oh my." So I started praying, and I started seeking God. I said, "God, what have you done? You done run off and left me?" So I kept praying and praying, and so finally there was a man came up to our little church that we was going to, and his name was Zell Carnes, and he got up and he preached about this man named George Pike. And I said, I said, "This man sounds like somebody I want to meet." So anyhow, I asked the man that I was going to his church, I said, "Is this man straight?" And he said, "I don't know, I never met him." He said, "I'll check him out." And I said, "Okay." So he came down here to Monroe, Georgia, and he met him, and he came back, and when he did, I said, "What is it? Did you meet him?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Is he straight?" He said, "Yeah, he's straight." That was all he'd say. He wouldn't say anything else. I said, So next week, I got in my car and I come down here. I said, and I was going to come down
here.
Talking
about 75?
Yeah, this was long about in July, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I want to meet him. So they said, "He's in that room up there. He's up there in the printing room." So I went in there and I knocked on the door. So I went in, and he introduced himself to me, and I introduced myself to him. And I said, "I want to meet you." And he said, "Okay." And when he did, there was something in my heart just flipped over, because I knew this is what I was hunting from. So I met him, and when I did, I went back down to Augusta, and I started getting my business ready to dispose of and move down here.
Wait a minute. After one visit?
After one visit, I knew that this man was...
How long did you talk to him?
Maybe 30 minutes, an hour, something like that.
Serious?
I knew that the man was straight. I said, "Man, this man is straight."
Enough for you to want to move.
Yes, sir. It was something that turned over in my heart, and I said, "Oh my God!" I couldn't believe. I said, "This is unreal," So I moved down here in like July or August or something of 75, and I was with him until 1996 when he passed away. And I traveled all over the world with him. I've been in about 40 countries. I've been around the world twice. And I worked with him. I was setting up meetings, doing public relations work with him and different things like that. And I saw the man's life. It's not one of them deals that somebody told me about somebody that was, I walked with a man 21 years. I knew what the man lived. I knew what kind of life he lived and everything. And it was just a great thing that happened. Words can't explain it to you. And in 1996, when he passed away, I continued. I stayed over here for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then anyhow, his son David was preaching, and David left, and when he left, I left too.
That would have been about 99.
Yeah, that was longer than 99, 2000. And then along about 2003, 2005, I moved to Louisiana, and I stayed over there, I don't know, probably seven or 8 years, something like that. And then I come back over here to Monroe, Georgia. Along about 1977 or somewhere in that vicinity, they opened a Pizza Hut here in Monroe up. And we had men's meeting on Monday night. So we had finished men's meeting, and I said, well, I'm going to go get me a little something to eat. So I drove into Monroe, and I said, well, I'll go to the Pizza Hut and get something to eat. Well, they had just opened up, a month ago or something like that. It hadn't been open long. So I walked in, and I was the only customer in the Pizza Hut. So
Well, that was probably late though, like about 9, 10 o'clock.
It was 9 or 10 o'clock. It was just 40. It was getting ready to close.
Yeah.
So I said, I would like to have somebody to talk to about the Lord. Just whisper a little prayer to myself. So I said, well, there ain't nobody in here. So I went over and I sat down in the booth. So after sitting down in the booth, a few minutes, the door come open, and there was a young man walked in, and I said, there's somebody just walked in. I said, that'd be nice to have somebody to talk to fellowship with. So he went over and he sat down on the other side of the restaurant. So I said, he sat down over there. So the waitress come over and waited on me. So he gets up and moves all the way across the restaurant and sat down at a table right next to my booth. So I said, So I looked at him, and he started talking to me, and I started, we started conversing backwards and forwards. So I said, you want to come over and join me? He said, yeah. So he come over and he sat down on the other side of me and started.
You don't remember his name, do you?
No, I can't remember what his name was. So I told him, we started talking about just general things, working and different things like that. He's real congenial, and we talked. And then the subject moved around to religion or preachers or something. And he said, it's just like that cult out there on 78. I said, well, what are you talking about, cult? He said, out there next to Walton EMC, out there on the hill, said there's a man out there, said he's got a cult, and said he takes all them people's money away from them, and just gives them what they, just a little bit at a time, don't give them much money. And said some more derogatory things about Brother Pike, so I knew who he was talking about. I didn't let on like nothing. I just sat and I listened. So I said, what do you mean it's a cult? And he said, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. He said, I got it straight. Said, I know what I'm talking about. I said, you did? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, that's good, So he just talked a little bit more. So I just give him a little more rope, And then finally I looked at him. I said, you say he takes all them people's money away from him? He said, yeah. Well, I reached in my pocket, and I had about $2,000 in my pocket. And I was working, making good money and everything. I pulled at $2,000.
You're talking about in 75 or 7 or somewhere in there.
Yeah, long about 77.
That was a pretty good bit of money back then.
Yeah. So I pulled that money out, and I said, you see this money? And he looked at me real funny. He said, yeah. I said, this is my money. I said, I go to that church out there that you're talking about. Well, needless to say, if he could have crawled under the table, he would have crawled under the table. He was real embarrassed. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. I started apologizing. No, you don't have to apologize. I said, look here. I said, but the next time you're going to start spreading lies about something, I said, you need to know what you're talking about. And I said, you need to tell the truth. And he looked at me and he apologized and everything else. I said, it's all right. I said, just remember, the next time, I said, get your facts straight before you start spreading lies about something. And so anyhow, he left, and that was the extent of that. So I imagine after that, the next time he started to say something about this cult that he called a cult, I imagine he done some soul searching.
Go ahead.
While I was doing a round the world trip I stopped in Hong Kong, and I was on my way to continuation of my trip. And Brother George, I had rendezvoused and met him there. And I was out in the airport, and there was a young Chinese man that I was talking to. I'd say young, he's probably 27, 28, 29, something like that. And I was talking to him, and he was telling me that he was a brain surgeon, and he was from mainland China, and he was fixing to go to Australia for some advanced study in brain surgery. So we got to talking, and so we talked about different things and everything. So I said, look, I got somebody I want you to meet. So he said, yeah, okay. So I introduced him to Brother Pike. So when I did, Brother George, he talked to him a little bit, and he said, what do you do? He said, what do you believe? He said, I don't believe in nothing. He said, I don't know anything about God. He said, he said, I was raised up. And he said, when I was, I think, 16 years old or something, he said, I went to the field and worked in the rice paddies for 2 years. You know, they have to give 2 years of their time to the country, and they can do any kind of different things that they do, whatever. And then he was chosen to go to higher education, on to medical school, on to brain surgery. And he said, I don't know nothing about no God or nothing like that. So Brother George said, well, and he talked to him a little bit about God. So he gets up. Brother George, they called him for his airplane. He had to, I think he was headed to Israel or something, but he went through security, and he got on the plane. And so when he did, I was sitting there with this Chinese doctor. So I looked, and I saw Brother George coming back off the plane, back through security, and they was fussing with him, you know, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And so he come back over, and he walked over where we was at. He said, I would like to pray with you. Would you like to pray? The man said, yeah, okay. So Brother George took my hand, and he took his hand, and we all three, we prayed. And Brother George just made a real simple little prayer. He said, God, he said, save this man, open this man's eyes up. And very simple prayer. And when he got through, the Chinese doctor looked at him, and his eyes got real big. And he said, whew. He said, I feel so clean. He said, I feel so clean. I said, goodness. And then Brother George, he got back on the plane. And I sat there, and I felt the Spirit of God hit me. I said, oh my. And I was talking to a man that didn't know nothing about God. He didn't preach him 2-hour sermon, baptize him in Jesus' name. He didn't do nothing like that. He just sat there and prayed a little simple prayer. But the Spirit of God entered into his body, and I ain't never felt God like I felt that time. It was the most fantastic thing, I guess, that I ever witnessed. And it was just, it was just pure God. That's what it was.